Hello, this is episode 68 of the Inventive Marketing Club. We're here every week to help you build a better marketing strategy. On this week's episode, we've got a bit of a grab bag. We're going through some customer questions and we're going to focus it on planning. There's a couple of questions that sit around planning, marketing budget and so on. So we'll go through those and hopefully they'll all come together. And I'm also joined with Claire, who's usually with us, but Claire's going to come on and we're going to go through some of these today. How are you doing, Claire?
I'm good, thanks, Ben.
Excellent. So what is the first question? I did have it up on my screen, but perhaps you can find it.
Well, I think we should take a dive at that age-old question of where to start with your marketing, because it's something that we encounter a lot with all of our clients. So Ben, where do you recommend you start?
Where do we start with marketing? Right. Well, it's a tricky question. And I often say, well, it depends. But I think the main thing to do first is to just take a step back from what you're doing. I think a lot of people just want to go and do the next thing. And they want to rush out on social media. They want to put some ads in place. They want to do, some cool TikTok video. I think the best thing to do really is just take a step back from everything that you've already been doing and have a bit of a review. In fact, I've got a process that I often go through when I'm starting to work with new coaching clients or website clients. So I thought it might be worth going through that and we can just talk through that particular process. So let's do a bit of a screen share. There we are. So we put it in a little Google Doc. I'm not sure if we're going to share it in this format. I think we might give you a link to this and a PDF. If you're part of the club, you can download it, but we'll make sure you have a copy of this. So the point of this, it's really an aid memoir for me because I go through all of this stuff all the time, but you can often forget some of the simplest questions. So the first thing I want to do is get people to take a step back and think about what they're actually trying to achieve, because a lot of people are just their head is just in the business, just doing the work, and all they want to do is they look up and suddenly go, I need more customers, or I need more business, or I need more people coming onto my website. And they're not really thinking about the longer term, about where they want to be in the future, because it could be that they do want to grow the business. It could be they just want to get more profit from the business. Maybe they're trying to sell. Maybe they're actually trying to get better customers. Maybe they get a lot of orders coming through, but some of their customers they don't get on well with. Maybe they're hard work. And who wants customers that hard work? So it's often quite good and quite fun actually to go through this vision bit and just think about where are we going. I've got a few questions here that I like to ask, like what do we want to be? How do we want to be thought of? What are our long-term objectives, blue sky visions, things you think, well, if I could, I'd like to do this, or I'd like the business to be like this. And it's quite good to quantify it as well. So I have this as a bullet pointed list of various different things that we might want to do. Some of them could be very much blue sky. They're not quantitative at all. There's no numbers against them. And some of them are, maybe they want to reach a certain amount of profit or turnover each year or each month. So it's good just to note it down. And I find this really useful for website projects as well, because again, people are launching in, they're all excited about doing a website. And I'm like, whoa, just stop there a second. Because I want to know where you're headed. Because even though I might not be helping them with the marketing, it's really good to know because it helps with the website. It really helps understand. And actually, it really helps when people are suggesting things for their website. I can take them back to the vision and say, is this going to help you with the vision? Because if it's not, what's the point in doing it? So that's the first thing I do. When I know you've spoken to a few clients, what sort of, do you find that useful as well, taking them a step back, Claire, really, and sort of getting to
definitely,
look
absolutely.
at the bigger picture?
I think, and also by writing it down, you're kind of making yourself accountable for your own actions and your goals, because it's very easy in 6 months' time to kind of look back and go, well, what was it that we wanted to achieve? And you can kind of divert off, and it kind of grounds you to what you actually need to propel your business.
Yes, and it's something actually that you can, if you get a bit lost in the weeds, you can look back at it and remind yourself that, what am I doing all this crap over here? I just want to focus on this. So it does help. And you know what? I mean, we don't do it enough. I mean, Claire and I will always chat after these webinar sessions. That's where we do the marketing. So we look at all the actions and work through things. And so actually we need to get back to this, Claire, and actually do this ourselves again. Because it's really fun actually to go back. It helps you focus, because sometimes you do get lost in the weeds and go, especially with me, I go down looking at doing the little things, and it's, you think, actually, is that worth it? So that's the first thing, is to really understand where we're going and have a look at the vision. And then review and see what's working already. So basically have a look at, if you're a new business, obviously you can't do this because you won't have done anything already. Maybe what you could do is do a bit of research, have a look at some businesses out there and see what they're doing that you like. We'll actually come on to that stage a little bit later in the competitor review part, but you could do this to say, well, what works for other people? But if you are a business that's been going for some time, even if it's only a few months, have a look and see what you've been doing already. Are there some social posts that are grabbing attention, that are actually getting clicks through to your website or getting people talking about your business? Have you been running some advertising? Which taglines work? Which straplines work to get people to come through? Which are the best pages that you've got on your website, which are actually converting people? It could be, I know with some clients, it can be a particular page on their website that we've designed for them. Or it could be a blog post that's actually appealing to people who've got a specific question. And it's really good to know what those are, what is working, because what you don't want to do is disrupt that. You want to improve upon it. So it's good to, these two I put together because they're looking at, well, where do we want to go and what's already working? I think it's a really good, fun process. I think that's it. When you've worked with people, Claire, do you often look back and have a look at the sort of work you've been doing together to see how it's been working?
Definitely. I think it's one of the most important stages to do, because you can't really move forward unless you can kind of see where you've been and how it's worked. So and it's an area that I think a lot of people kind of forget to do or are too busy to do, and they're kind of happy propelling forward, and then they kind of get to a point where they're like, well, I'm doing all this stuff and I just don't know where I am with it. So yeah, I think as a minimum every 12 months you should definitely look at the past 12 months, if not it quarterly or half yearly, if you can.
And what do you think are the best ways of doing it? Because obviously there's lots of different ways of measuring these things, aren't there? And I guess you've got to for me it's looking at what is actually getting you sales or leads, if you can't measure the sales part of it. What is actually getting you something tangible, not just, oh, I'm getting lots of likes and comments on social media. So what does that mean? It's great what you're doing, but if you're not getting anything from it, like, as a bit, businesses are there to make money. So if you're not getting money or you're not getting a tangible leads to it, then for me, it's not necessarily working. It's not that it's bad, but it may not be working as well as you think.
Yeah, I agree with that. But then also the other side of the coin is you're building that brand awareness, and whether somebody sees like a social post or a blog post, but they decide to pick up the phone rather than go through, your trackable goal on your website of contact form. It's, it does make it difficult to track, but I think you've just got to look at the wider picture.
Yeah, it's a good point you raised there about tracking across different sources, because there's so many customers I speak to where they don't. When I ask them, well, where are you getting all your leads from? They're like, well, I don't know, internet. As they say, they've put me in on Google or something like that, or they found me on social media. And I want to know where. What did they type in? What did they see? And I think you need to get into the habit of asking those questions, so that over time you can bring that into the conversation, whether it's on email or whether it's in a form or so you see them in person, because then you really get to understand where they're coming from. Okay, so we now know where we're going. We've had a good review of what's already working. So now we can sort of push that forward and start looking at, well, who do we actually want to work with? Who are our best customers? And I always start, I've got a couple of workshops, and I always start with this in a lot of them, because everyone wants to dive in and do all the fun stuff. And they think, well, social media marketing is about getting out there and talking. And it is, but it's about talking to the right people. And it's about engaging them in a conversation or sharing things with them that they want, not that you just want to push out there. So I go through this process, and actually, I don't know if you can find it in the scenes in the background, Claire, but we've got, I think it was the marketing funnel webinar I did. I don't know if you can find that and maybe share the link for me in the chat, and I'll bring it up. But this is where I actually I talk through this process. It's one of the previous webinars we've done. And the process is basically to think about your best customers and think about what their needs are. So what do they want to achieve, and how do you help them achieve that? So I think in the examples, I've got several examples in the marketing funnel one. And if we can't find it now, we'll put it in the notes. But basically, I talk through one called HelloFresh. And HelloFresh help people by providing a box full of prepackaged food and recipe cards. And so their goals are they save time, they save money, and they save stress. So that's what they've done is they've looked at their customer marketplace, and they've said, well, what are the key goals? And then they design their whole business around them. Now, I appreciate if you've already got a business, you can't necessarily do that. So what you would do is look at your customers' goals, look at what they actually need to do, what jobs they need to do, how you're going to help them. And then you think about, well, how are my services aligned with that? That's the first stage. And you could even actually write benefit statements off the back of that. So this is where you look at each one of those goals and how you would help people achieve them and write them as little statements. And those statements can be used for advertising. They can put them on your website. I mean, I've actually used them as copy that goes on the website, or it forms the basis of copy that goes on the website. What it does is it helps make sure all your communication is focused on what your customers want, which is really important. So the next stage to that is where you want to meet the customer at every stage in the funnel towards buying from you. So we've got 3 different phases here. You've got awareness, which is where they're meeting you for the first time. So maybe they're coming in from social media, they're coming in on an advert, maybe it's a referral, but they're meeting you for the first time. And then you've got consideration, which is where they're going through a phase of getting to know you, getting to know your product, and deciding whether your product or service is something they actually want. And then you've got the decision phase. So the decision phase is where they actually do decide to want to work with you, and you are then helping them buy from you. So what you don't want is to get someone from awareness to consideration, they're ready to buy, and then they back out because you haven't fulfilled all the little checkbox tick list items that they actually need. You know, maybe they need to pay you in a certain way, or maybe your delivery is going to take longer than they thought, and they back out of the process. So as part of your marketing strategy, you should really start thinking about, once you know who your customer is, think about, how am I going to meet them at each stage? So I've got a couple of questions on here that are quite useful. So in awareness, you can think about what their pains are, hopes and fears. You could talk about those. You can use that as fodder for social media or blog posts on the website or videos. Think about how people currently describe the product, because that's going to help you when you're talking about it. Who has the problem? This is very much linking in with the product fit. Where do they look for recommendation? What social platforms they're going to be on? Why should they care about you and your service? I think is really important, because a lot of people talk about their product as if it's the best thing in the world, but really customers just want to solve a problem, so that you need to link their problem through to what you're doing. Under consideration, think about what they know already. What services might they know about? What competition have you got? Because it's really important to understand who the competition are, so that you can beat them, basically, or at least you know where you can win. It may be that actually you can work very well with the competition. In some cases, the competition is not a like company or product or service. It's going to be doing nothing. It's going to be doing something else. I know Netflix's biggest competitor is people on TikTok, or you know, using something completely different. Or because it's basically people have a certain amount of spare time, and Netflix wants to get as much of that as possible to help justify the amount they're paying per month. And if people are on TikTok and then find they're not really watching Netflix, they're going to stop their Netflix subscription. And then in decision, you need to know who will make the decision. Maybe there's multiple people in the company. You need to know how they're going to pay. You need to know like a huge checklist of things really that people want to know to actually help make that decision to buy from you. And this is really important and can be quite difficult sometimes, how do you make that process as easy as possible? If you think about buying something on an iPhone, apps particularly, but actually anything on an iPhone now, you can use Apple Pay. The benefit of buying things in that way is you've got your credit card details already stored in the system. So when you're browsing for an app, all you need to do is click on the download button, click on the buy button, and you get it. Same with in-app purchases. You trust who you're buying from most of the time, but you know, people trust Apple. They've got their details in there already. They just need to hit the buy button and confirm, and it's done. Same with Apple Pay if you're buying something online. Apple has all your details already. It's so easy to click the Apple Pay button and then just confirm on your phone and you've bought it. That makes the whole process easy, something that is actually quite complicated. Amazon's done exactly the same thing. How can you make your decision process super easy? Okay, I think you found a link. I'm going to click on it and see what comes up, Claire. Hopefully it's the right one.
Is it this one?
Oh, no, actually, you know what? This is a podcast, isn't it? From back in when we were resharing the podcast. Actually, this is a really good one to listen to. This is from Michelle Evans, and she was talking about creating a marketing funnel. It's not this one, but I will find it and we'll put it on later. But this is a good one as well. We'll make sure this link is in the show. Let's go back to this. Oh, a little sneak peek of my business numbers there. That's something we might come back to. That's part of an answer to another question. Where are we? So, moving on. So we've thought about our audience. Then that's really key. You don't want to skip this part of it, because if you understand who you're trying to sell to and how you're going to help them, everything becomes so much easier. Because just like the vision, you can go back to this if you're stuck for what to create, and you can look back at your work here and say, well, what do they really want to know about? And it's all here. So moving on, we've got competitors. Who do we need to beat? So first you need to know who they are. What do they do well? Where do they fall short? Because if you know what they do well, you could think, well, can we be better than that? And if you know where they fall short, you could maybe talk more about that. Because it's quite good in some ways if you are wanting to, if you're talking to a customer, whether it's on a website or in person, is to make the bar event of working with someone like you or buying a product like you higher. So the more you can educate your customer to say, this is the level of service that they want. This is the product they should be buying because of these reasons. Maybe, for example, with hosting, maybe if they're buying hosting for their website, then they should have UK-based hosting because it's going to be faster. It's also going to help with GDPR because they're keeping all the data within the European Union. I know we're not in that at the moment, but like from a GDPR perspective, it keeps things easier. You also want it to be fast. So maybe you're saying, well, our hosting is a certain speed. Maybe it will load your website in less than a second. That means that any other provider, if they're not able to deliver that or prove that, it's going to make it harder for people to buy from you. So it's really good to understand who your competitors are and where you can be better than them. And if they are better than you in certain areas, maybe you know the areas where you aren't going to be able to compete with them. And actually, if that's what a customer wants and that feels like the better product for them, then you at least know that maybe in your marketing, there are certain customers that you don't want to be speaking to because actually they're always going to go for the other competitor because they offer a product level that you can't compete with. So that will help in your marketing that you and your copywriting, that you're filtering off customers that you know you can win. So very simple here. You just pick your competitors. There's different ways of doing this. You can either pick your competitors that you can see visibly that keep coming up. Either you pass them as you're driving around because they're doing the same thing. You see them advertise a lot and you know they're doing the same thing. Or you see them on Google. So if you were to Google one of your keywords that you're trying to optimize for, maybe they're the one that comes up on page 1 or position 1. So think about your competitors as basically the people who are offering a similar service to you. Or like Netflix, you think about competitors who are offering something that achieves the same goal, but might be a different product. So it's another way of thinking about it. And then you list those competitors down. I like to put their websites in there as well. And then you note down what you like about them. So you just have a bulleted list there. And that's quite a good process, really. And what you've got to do is not look at your competitor in a way that you've got to look at it from a customer. So you've not got to look at it from your perspective. You've got to look at it from a customer's perspective and think about what a customer will see compared to your website or your social presence. And, you know, if they're doing some good things, you've got to give them kudos, you've got to give them credit, and you've got to look for, well, can I do what, you know, that maybe they've got some good ideas, maybe they are winning business that way. Can I do what they're doing but better? Can I take some of the ideas that they've generated but do it better? Or even better, can I do something different? Can I differentiate myself so much that, yeah, sure, if people want this particular company, they're doing something over here, but we're doing it differently. And so there becomes no competition because you're nicely splitting the market. It all comes back to your audience, who you're trying to serve. Do you have any ideas on competitors, Claire? Do you have any thoughts when you're talking to people about how to get around the competition or how to beat them?
Well, a bit like, it reminds me of a blog post that we wrote a while ago of if your competitors are at Tenerife, then you're going to go to 11 a reef. So whatever they're going to do, you're going to do better. And it's quite fun, actually, kind of dissecting the competition and kind of seeing what they're up to, and just, you know, sort of pulling those threads of what you can do better than them. So yeah. And I think that's why I enjoy SEO so much, because you look at your competitors and it's sort of literally a puzzle of how to kind of beat them. So if you're slightly competitive, it's quite a fun exercise to do.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, looking at it as a puzzle, because it does give you, it can give you lots of ideas as well, can't it? It's not just about, certainly for SEO, about knowing where you're going to beat them, but it can give you lots of other ideas that go well beyond the bounds of SEO in terms of things that you can do.
And content creation, it's just really lovely to be able to kind of look at a sort of quite a spread of different approaches to the same topic. And I often think, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Ben, but when you're on the dance floor and you're not a particularly good dancer, if you look at like the 3 best dancers in the room and you nick a move from each.
Oh, what a good idea.
And make your own combination.
Yeah.
So if you could apply that to marketing, don't plagiarize, don't nick, but if you could sort of reinterpret each of those sort of moves into your own, then you have your own formula to success.
I like that analogy. That's very good, actually. Yeah, so you've got to nick the dance moves from the 3 best dancers. Brilliant. So what have you got, any particular moves that you think work?
No, not that I'm going to share online.
No. There's a strange one we do at kickboxing where it's kind of like you grab your head and grab your leg and you do a funny thing. I don't know what it's called. Some silly move. Took me a while to get it, but I've cracked it now. I won't demonstrate it. But that's a good point. Yeah. So looking at competitors and trying to find out a way, trying to find out like what are they doing well and how can I use that to my advantage and against them in a way, because it's all fun, isn't it? There is another way of looking at competitors and saying, well, yes, they're competitors. Other people, my customer can buy from them, but sometimes you can work together with your competitors. I know in the web development arena, and certainly any creative arena, really, it's not about you're not all delivering the same product. You're delivering an opinionated product. Every different web developer or designer or copywriter has an opinion, and actually, you really want to show that opinion, because that's what people are buying. Yes, you might be able to bring in a diverse range of clients, but actually working with other people in your industry can be good as well, because they might be able to recommend people they don't want to work with because they're not clients that suit them. So actually, sometimes you don't want to be too distant from your competition. Strategy. How do we get there? This is basically, this is where you list down all the things that you need to do to achieve what you want to achieve in the vision. So you look back at the vision, you look at the things you want to do, how you want to be thought of, the goals you want to achieve, and you start listing them down here based on and through the route of reaching your audience in whatever form that may be. And I'm not going to specify where you should start in marketing. It could be best for you to go onto Instagram and do some reels, or it could be some targeted advertising on Facebook or Google, or it could be some search optimization. It could be all of those. it really depends on where your audience are, how much time you have available, what budget you've got available. Really, that's going to be up to you. But you look back at your audience, you look back at your awareness. How are you going to reach them? How are we going to use that knowledge to reach our vision? And you just basically list everything down here. And then these form actions, which you can take forward and work with yourself or your team to take them forward. And then most importantly, how did we get on? How can we improve? So you look back after, and you might want to do this probably you could do it every month. I do that with our coaching clients. So I will look back at the actions from last month, run through the list, look at what worked, what didn't, what hasn't been done, what we need to, what we're stuck on, and moving things forward. Looking at the stats, particularly if you've done a campaign or ads. I know I was talking to a client just the other day, and they wanted to know, if I increase the ad spend, are they going to get more clicks? Are we going to get more sales actually coming through? So I did a little bit of research and a little bit of experimental calculation to say, yeah, you should get some, based on what I can see in Google and the sort of conversion rate you're getting, you should be able to put more money in and you get more money out. They did that experiment. We had a look at the stats. We just talked about them the other day, and they actually got more than I predicted, which is great. It's just brilliant. And so that means what we've now taken forward from that is we're going to run that for 3 months so we can average that out. And then at the end of 3 months, if we're still up from where we are, we will run it again. We'll increase the budget further because we always know we're going to get sales off the back of it. And we'll keep doing that until the profit or the amount of sales isn't really worth getting for the amount of budget we're putting in. And that's a nice exercise to do that you can do slowly over time, and you can start to slowly increase your budget. It's quite fun, actually. So really, it's just about looking at what works, what you can do better, how many conversions did you get, and really measuring all of that so you can note down all of the things that you can do for next time. And then if you're reviewing it every month or every 3 months, you can then take it back to the beginning, review your vision. We've already done this bit. That's really for starting off. And then you can go back and just check this is all valid, get back to your strategy and take it forward. So this is something you can sort of run and repeat with on a regular basis. I don't quite have it like this. We have our coaching sessions slightly different, but effectively they're doing the same thing as this constant review process. But we use this to start off with, and it's incredibly effective. So do you think that answers the question, Claire?
I think we've covered it. And I think the last 2 steps of that marketing plan kind of leads quite nicely into the second question that is followed by this, which is how do we know how much budget we should assign to our marketing?
Yeah, well, I've alluded to it a little bit. It's a tricky one. Basically, what I often say is, whatever you're willing to lose, that's the amount of budget you can put into it. And it's the same with time, actually. You can think of your time and money. They're all budgetable because you've only got a certain amount of both of them. Generally, money is probably easier to get hold of than time because you can't get more of that. And I would say that I would look at your net profit, basically. So whatever you've got left after you've paid yourself, you've paid any employees you've got, any contractors, any suppliers, you've paid everything off, and you really want to think about, let me just stop the sharing here. And you really want to think about that money I've got left, I can take that as profit, but I can also plow that back into the business as an investment to grow it for next time. So that is the maximum budget I think you can allow. You can invest more, but the thing is, I feel if you're investing more, you're going into debt within your own company to do that. You might borrow money to do it, but I think it's better if you can use the profit that you're generating and sow that back into the business to build it up, whether that's, and that's on anything, not just marketing. That could be on capital expenditure or anything like that. But essentially, the marketing budget is the total amount of net profit you've got available at the end of whatever period you're looking at. And then you can, there's, 2 ways I'm going to suggest. There's one way, which it comes from Action Coach. I don't know if anyone has used Action Coach. I did actually when we started. It was quite fun, actually, the whole process. Although it's a little bit rigid for me in terms of how it works, but they had some quite interesting ideas. And one of them is called 10 by 10. And the idea of 10 by 10 is that you take your budget. So this, let's say you take 100% of your net profit. So whatever you've got available that you are willing to lose. So you're willing that can just disappear and you can still survive to the next month. So you take that total idea and you spread it. You spread 10% over 10 different ideas. So each idea for marketing you have gets 10% of your budget. And that could be, I'm going to run a marketing ad campaign. I'm going to run a bit of networking. So not run a bit of networking, sorry. I'm going to go to some networking events. I'm going to do some social campaigns. I'm going to hire a copywriter to write some blogs for our search optimization. So there's your 10 different activities and you put 10% of the budget on each one. And then you basically review that every single month. You review the activities, you review how the spend went. And ultimately what I would look to do is use that as a starter. And then you would look to refine that down and find the sources of conversion where you get leads and you get sales. You find those and you start spending more and more money on those and not less money on the ones that don't actually work. Now, I think it's important to think over the long term though. And Claire was saying earlier, you can't just look at maybe your social activity and say, well, I'm not getting any sales from it, therefore I'm going to stop posting on there. It could be that that's where you're building your brand, that's where you're building a relationship with your customer, and then they call you, or they Google you, or they meet you at a networking event, and that's how they meet you. And then, if you're not careful, what can happen is you say, well, okay, all the social stuff I do is not working, but networking events work, SEO works. Just people randomly ringing you on the phone, which that doesn't happen. They're going to see you somewhere. So you do have to be careful about monitoring the process. And what I'd say in terms of monitoring that is when you get a sale, when someone is willing to pay you money, find out how they heard about you. And don't just let them get away with, I typed something into Google and you came up. Or I just, a friend referred me. You want to find out some detail. Well, what friend was it that referred you? How did they talk about us? What did they say that we could do? Did they give you any advice and anything to specifically to talk to us about? What was the keyword phrase that they used to search for you? You want the detail because that detail is going to help you know which of your channels worked. You can also go into Google Analytics and you can start to look at which are the channels that work together. So you can actually see that maybe a bit of SEO and a bit of paid advertising and a bit of social actually brought you in a lead rather than just one of those. The other way is to really use my plan. So go back to my plan and just think about all the different ways of reaching your customer that you've written down in the plan. Use the same idea for your the amount of money you can spend, which is to think about your total net profit, what you can lose, what you're prepared to lose or give away, and then split that evenly over the actions. Very similar to 10 by 10, but I think 10 by 10 just sounds like a nice idea, but you don't necessarily want to be running 10 different ways of finding customers to begin with. So it's just going back to that awareness stage and saying, maybe I've got to write some blog posts. Maybe I do want to do some social media posts. Maybe I do want to do some video. Key thing for me is you relate those all together. So any marketing budget you are spending on contractors, copywriters, designers, and so on is all working together. So I don't know does that help, Claire? Does that help answer it? Or is there, anything I've missed there? Any other ways of thinking about it?
No, I think you're doing very well, Ben. So I guess then the customer typically asks, well, what's the best way to track my return on investment?
Right. So yeah, how do they know what's working correctly? Well, yeah, again, this starts to get tricky and it's detailed because tracking the marketing is one thing, but tracking how your marketing translates into a sale is harder. Even in big companies, I find big companies can be the worst sometimes because they have so much stats that they don't really tie it all together. And that's what you really need. You really need to tie all the work marketing is doing to actually get sales. Whereas all sales care about, certainly if you've got a big team and they've got a sales team, all sales care about is that they got a sale, not where that sale actually came from. Yes, the salesperson might have actually helped that sale come in, but where it came from. So let's go back to the marketing plan again. The sort of framework is to know what our goals are. So we go back to our goals. We think about, well, what did we want to achieve? Have we achieved that? And then that's going to help us know what to track. You know, if we're an e-commerce company, it's going to be a lot easier because we're going to have everything's online. All the conversions take place online. So it's a lot easier for us to just go on to Google Analytics or whatever other tracking program we're using. Maybe we've got something set up in Data Studio where we're mashing lots of data together. And you can see where people came from, what work was going on, what they looked at, and then eventually what converted. So you can start to see much more easily what your return on investment was. But if you're a bigger company, maybe you're selling a service, then you need to start thinking about what brings in the leads or the sales. And you need to start trying to find a way to tie together your marketing efforts with what is actually giving you tangible quotes, leads, or sales, whichever work for you. I find it's easiest if you can bring people back to your website. So if you can always bring people to your website, that's where you start converting people, getting them to fill out a form. I think that's the easiest way often. If there's no online purchase, maybe get them to bounce via an RFQ or a request for quote. And then you can say, well, I saw all the activity we're doing on Google Ads, in social media, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, maybe if it's being specific. You can see all of that work and you can see that people came into the website, went through down your sort of conversion funnel, went onto the RFQ page, and then they filled out a form. So you know how many forms were filled out. That's a lead. And then you can start tallying that with how many sales you got. So you then do need a tally on which sale came in from which channel. And that gives you a good idea. I know we did it with Selmac. We actually tied together a lot of their data. They had a great internal system of sales data, but it wasn't tied in with the marketing. So we pulled all that together using Data Studio actually to sort of bring together these two databases to give a really good idea on return on investment and actually giving an ROI calculation. But that's not always easy for some people. So there is something that you could use, which might help, not necessarily from an ROI point of view, but might help from monitoring business numbers. So I'll just share this. If you're doing, as I suggest to most people, is you're doing marketing activity and bringing them to your website and getting them to fill out a form, then you can use this process. And it's quite useful, well, for a number of different ways. Let me just explain what's going on here. So we've got a table, and it actually got the year 2015. That must have been when I made it originally. But so you just want to broadly put in the year of that you are tracking your marketing over. So it's obviously going to be 2022 now. And you'd duplicate a new one of these for a new tab for each year. So you can see track progress over time. And then you've got in column B, rows 2 to 12, you've got the months. And then for each of those months, you've got related data you're going to collect. So I want to know how many web users you got in that month, how many leads you got through in that month. That sort of detail you should be able to get from your website if you're tracking it correctly. And then I want to know how many orders you got. So that's going to be, if you're using an accounting package like Xero, then it's going to be how many invoices you actually invoice through. But you might actually have a different system for it. But you basically want to know how many tangible orders you get. And then total amount of income, total amount of revenue that you generate. And then any costs. And then you've got a profit calculation. So that actually, I think this idea also comes, I've taken it and run with it myself, but this basic idea comes from Action Coach. So the idea of this is you can track over time what you need to do to get more leads. It doesn't tell you exactly where to get them from, so you need to refer back to you need a bit more detail on the marketing sources, but it does tell you where leads, how many more web users you need to get the leads you need to generate the orders, to generate the income and then profit that you want. And there's a fun little calculator down the bottom. So what you do is you enter some of your data in, and then it gives you an average. So this is an average amount of profit. Let's say I want to increase my average amount of profit per month from it's 2.8K at the moment. I want to boost that by 20%. So what I do in this little green box is I'll type in 20. And then what it's done is run the numbers to work out how many web users I need, how many leads I need, orders, what income that might generate, and maybe what costs I might have out off the back of that. And this is, I find, really useful because a lot of people, and it comes back to your marketing strategy again, you go back to your vision. If there's a certain amount of profit you want to generate, you can put it in here, and then it's going to tell you, based on your current numbers, how many web users you actually need to get that. And I think this is always quite a fun exercise. I say fun. I don't know if customers always find it fun because they go, how many web users do I need to get? But it gives them a really clear idea. Let's say they say, oh, we want to double the profit we're making. So great. But how achievable is that? I don't know. So we actually run it through. How many orders are you getting through the website at the moment? How many leads are coming in to generate that? And we can work out if it's feasible. So in this case, 20% extra profit for this particular example use case. We don't need necessarily that many web users, just another 300. Actually, it's not even 300, it's probably like 200 or so web users. Maybe even with the conversion rate at exactly the same percentage, we don't need to increase that. But what we could do, rather than just increasing the profit by 20%, what we can do is actually just increase each section by 10%. And in this way, you should be able to get to a point where you've got more profit. But all you need to do, you don't need to do as much work. You don't need as many people coming in. You just need to convert more of the conversion rate to be able to get what you want. So it's quite a fun exercise to do that. Right. I think that's it. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thanks, Ben.
I went into a bit of detail with it, but this is a document, the My Business Numbers document, I think is actually linked at the end of our business our strategy from which is an article on the blog, strategy checklist, which is an article on the blog, and it's actually quite a fun way to understand what your business numbers are and really just start tracking them in a basic way, and not looking at your finances as a way of looking back all the time and saying, well, this is what they are, I can't do anything with them, but using that knowledge to generate ideas on what you can, if you want more profit, what you need to do to get more profit in the future. It's quite a fun process. It's actually something I haven't done for a little while, so I might revisit that now. How are we doing for time? Oh, we come up to the hour, so that's it. You can't ask me any more questions. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think we should do a presentation based on this, because I think there's going through that strategy framework. I think we could come up with a bit more detail and go through that as a bit of a process for people. It's something I don't think we've covered before, so it might be good to do that. So wrapping up, Claire, what's coming up next week?
So next week you're joined by Ash Gibbons, who's going to help you talk through password security.
Yeah, and I know Ash is hot on that, so that's going to be quite fun on what he's going to come up with. I'm just going to sit back basically and let Ash lead that one. I'm going to have lots of questions for him. We'll go through and see what he comes up with. But yeah, the aim is, I don't know what triggered this. We were talking about two-factor the other day, and how a lot of people don't have that enabled. In fact, actually, I'll just a little story just to tease everyone into this. My son had an Instagram account, and just before he was going to go away on a camp somewhere, he goes, "Yeah, I can't get into my Instagram account." I'm like, "Okay, we'll go through a password reset." It wouldn't send it. It wouldn't send it. Actually, it would send the password reset, but he'd get through and it'd say, "What's your two-factor authorization?" I go, "Have you set this up? Have you set up a two-factor on there?" He goes, "No, I haven't set it up at all." And so we try lots of different other ways. We even try a way to recover the account by a very manual process for Instagram to actually look at you as a user and say, "Oh, your account's been hijacked, but we'll get it back to you." But because he didn't have any pictures of his face on there, he couldn't prove it was his. So what had happened, it transpires, is that someone had phished him and had actually sent him a message on Instagram saying, "Hey, I'm locked out of my account." But Instagram say that if they send you a code and you give me the code, that's going to help me get back into my account. Now, my son, being naive to it and being very nice and friendly, gave him the code. And then obviously what that code was, it's like a one-time login code that the fisherman, I don't know what you call scammer, nasty person, used to basically gain access to his account. What they did, which was really clever, which is why he didn't know about it straight away and couldn't reverse it, is they went and enabled two-factor. Because he hadn't enabled two-factor, they could enable two-factor, and then he just couldn't get in at all. If they'd changed his password or username, he could have had a chance to revoke that. But because they just changed two-factor and nothing else, he wasn't alerted. And it was just dormant for a while, and eventually they started posting some spam and it was taken down. So I think this is where it came from. It just goes to show that even if you don't want your account to be protected with two-factor, install it, enable it, because if you don't, someone else is going to do that. Anyway, we might go into that story next time. Yeah, it's quite crazy. Okay, that'd be great. I look forward to Ash coming on. You can see us here every Friday from 10 a.m. We cover everything from marketing, strategy, social, video, more, and we even answer some questions occasionally. If you've got something exciting to share, do join us. Just email support@ratherinventive.com. We'd love to hear from you and have you on talking about that. We've had many people on talking about their product, service, or something interesting they've done in their company. Don't forget, you can catch up on all previous webinars on our website. Head over to ratherinventive.com/membership, sign in, and you'll see everything there. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Claire, and we'll see you all next week.